This is Do It For a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
You know, you can get all the knowledge you can to set yourself up to dive into something, but if you're not touching it hands-on or learning from mistakes, I really don't believe you're going to understand how something's supposed to be done right.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It For a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back. Today I've got Justin Miller with me from Force Fed Performance. They're out of Fayetteville, North Carolina, or Fort Bragg area. Justin is a owner-operator, a smaller shop. He's got one tech with him and a receptionist. And I've met Justin through Evolution M, and he's kind of in the Evolution community, but he also does a lot of other stuff I'm sure he'll tell us about. So, Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm great, and thank you for having me.
Cool. So, Justin, we've you actually approached me to do this interview, and I really liked the concept that you kind of bringing to this. You kind of pointed out that a lot of the shops we've been interviewing, and this is definitely true, are been larger, more success, or not necessarily more successful, but larger shops and people that have known more worldwide. And I really like the idea that, you know, like you are an owner-operator, and, you know, that's kind of the same perspective that I came from. And so I think it's a really cool interview to interview other people that are, you know, smaller shops, you know, in a, you know, like a Fayetteville, I don't think is like a huge metroplex, but, you know, you have to vary the type of cars you work on. So it's you have to be skilled in a lot of different cars. You can't just specialize in one thing. So, Justin, why don't you go ahead and tell us about how you got involved? You know, like, take us back to when you were a kid. You know, when did you really get started? What got you involved in cars all the way to when you kind of started your business?
Sure. I guess it's the same old cliche everybody, for the most part, that gets into cars is either, you know, they grew up in it around their family, their dad got them into cars or hot rodded back in the day. And a lot of that has to do with, I guess, where you grow up and geographically where you come from. And obviously being in the South, a lot of people down here, you know, drag race, street race, do hot rod stuff. So obviously, like a lot of other people, my father got me into it. And, you know, it was always a hobby, so to speak, just like how a lot of people get into owning a shop or starting a business is one way it starts out as a hobby. The next thing you know, you may be making some sort of an income from it and say, hey, you know, I'm doing pretty well at this, or I've made something out of myself, so I'll give it a shot and see what happens. That's sort of what happened with myself. To start with, I was a big sports guy. I was very involved with athletics and things like that. And, you know, just like everybody else, you can say the has-been story where, you know, you only run it so far and then you got to come up with something else. So that's somewhat have happened with me, even going through school, grade school, and growing up. I was always around my father doing cars. He was a huge, you know, Corvette guy, GM guy, all that. So that's basically where my roots come from. And then, you know, the college thing came around, and I still had a passion for cars. And my first full-time job actually was as a GM tech. And the funny thing about that we can go into is nobody realized how young I was when I started a dealer. I think when I started a dealership, I was 17, and basically conned my way into a job. When I had to leave college due to financial stuff, being the only man in the family, you know how it goes. You basically have to take care of everything, or, you know, grow up and be the man, and, you know, take care of everybody, make sure everything's good to go. And it was just time for me just to go to work. So that's what I had to do. And with quitting college early, financially, I didn't have a degree. I didn't have any kind of skill set other than, hey, I grew up on cars and I did it on the side. So that's kind of what led me into being a technician. And I was, I believe, 17 years old when I started at GM. And it took everybody that worked with me a good amount of time to figure out exactly how young I was. And once that started, oh my God, the hazing was ridiculous. A good side of that is I think I was on the job for about 2 weeks, and the head tech grabbed me on the side and said, you know, how old are you exactly? And I said, well, I'm 17. And the guy, without missing a beat, said, well, holy shit, if I knew I was 17 and I had to work on cars the rest of my life, I'd wake up to a big bowl of rat poison for breakfast and and jump off of a stool with a noose tied around my neck and shoot myself in the mouth just in case the rat poison didn't work. And that shocked me a little bit. But, you know, here I am a bunch of years later and still doing it. So I guess the rat poison didn't work.
So did you grow up in Fayetteville?
I did not, actually. Like you said, it's not a big metropolitan area. It's basically one of those cities that are working off of a military base that's rather large. I think it could be, but not anymore. Fort Bragg used to be, or still is, something like the largest open base in the U.S. or something like that. So I can't put an exact number on it, but there's a very, very, very large military base out of here, and that's predominantly the amount of income that comes in from the city. I actually grew up around Raleigh, which is now speaking a much, much larger metropolitan area, which there's still a ton of work out of there. So like California has Silicon Valley or whatnot. RTP in Raleigh is kind of the same thing. So, an hour and a half away, you go from, complete military town to doctors, scientists, research lab kind of thing, and manufacturing. So it's pretty incredible the diversity that everybody has out here.
Okay, and you said you started college, but you said you didn't finish it. So you were 17 when you started college. Is that right?
Yes.
Or were you at the GM dealership first?
Oh no, I actually did start college at 17. I was younger, so when I graduated high school, I was still 17 years old.
Okay.
And I could have been 18, but it was so long ago. I was 17 when I graduated, and I was a big athlete, so I was really big into sports, and actually went to college on a scholarship. And my parents separated when I was very, very young, so it was somewhat of a shocker. And anybody that's been through that type of situation, knows how difficult that can be, and how that can break you, mentally, physically, everything. And it was one of those things where I had to just basically step up, be a man at a very young age. So I guess hindsight on that was it turned me into a very mature adult at a very young age. Even now, everybody I'm dealing with, industry-wise, especially in this industry, is somewhat shocked at how young I am and what we've done. Which
so how old are you right now?
I will be 30 in July.
Okay.
And just like you said, you've known of us for a very long time. So
Yep.
Technically, when I started the name Force Fed Performance, I think I was something like 23, 24, something like that. But even at that time, when I started the name business-wise, I was already doing many things with cars and track stuff and all that. I was just doing it on the side, and that's what kind of led me to leave the whole dealership thing.
I want to ask a quick question. So you were at the dealership, so you went there without even having done a trade school or anything, right? So they.
Oh no, without a doubt, yeah.
Were you a tech, or were you like one of their lube techs or something?
Oh no, I was thrown into the fire. Like I said, I somewhat conned my way into it. I gave the story of how I grew up working on cars, all that, and it was very interesting to where, like you said, that's how most people start out, as lube tech stuff, and doing PDIs, like pre-delivery inspections or whatnot. And to start out with, I was basically thrown my space in the dealership, which a lot of times at a dealer you might be given, if there's 10 guys in a full line shop, a flat bay, 2 lifts, and that's your area, that's where you work at. And I was thrown next to the head Corvette tech that was at GM, so I was basically his protege. So he was responsible for anything, I may have messed up to start with early on the job, or, been questioned about or anything. And it was a very, very eye-opening experience, just because, you can work on cars all you want to at your house or whatever, but when it comes down to that, and you're dealing with customers and timeline and turning hours and flagging hours and all that, it's a completely different world. So not only do you have to know what you're doing, you have to do it fast, you have to be diligent, and you really have to watch your P's and Q's, just because, it doesn't take but one small slip up. Next thing you know, you don't have a job, or, you're leaving somebody on the side of the road, or, even worse, you're injuring somebody, So it was pretty interesting. Like I said before, nobody really understood how young I was to start with, and it was kind of shocking to them. So I became somewhat of the dealership mascot for techs, as you could say. But it was a great experience, certainly, and helped me get to where I am now as far as running a shop, understanding how a shop runs, seeing how one is ran on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so take us from, you started at the dealership 17, 18 years old, and so take us from transitioning from that full-time job to, running your own business. When did you start ForceFed, and how did you transition into that?
Okay. Well, that was maybe around 2004, 2005-ish, something of that nature. And, I can remember even before then, before I graduated high school, doing the magazine thing, and saying, one day I'm going to have my own shop. If sports doesn't work out, college doesn't work out, whatever comes of that, I know, regardless of what I do degree-wise or school-wise, this is what I want to do. This is what makes me happy. I really believe I can make a contribution as far as the industry is concerned. And I believe what happened was when I was at the dealer, I bought my first Evo, and I had a S14 to start with when I was in high school, which back then it was kind of funny where nobody really knew what it was, and it wasn't cool yet. The drifting thing hadn't exploded. The movie stuff obviously was out, but that had absolutely nothing to do with me getting into cars. It just so happened to be around the timeline that I got a driver's license. Which is kind of funny because a lot of people nowadays, that's kind of what they'll say, either got them into cars or got them into the industry or,
Sure.
Made a hobby out of it. So
for the younger guys, I should say.
Well, right.
Most of the older guys is way beyond that, right?
Right. Well, technically, I guess you could say I still am a younger guy. I guess I was just in that, short transition period where, I might have had a little bit more experience than the guys that are my age at the time did. So there was a lot of other background, like I said, GM hot rod stuff before the import scene kind of exploded. And I think what was going on was I bought my first Evo and started modding and all that good stuff. And a lot of the stuff that's, as you know from doing them, it was not around back then. So it made it, I'm not going to say difficult, but it was a lot less user-friendly back then. So nowadays where a guy can go out, buy one, buy other stuff, put it on, just pay somebody to tune it, you can kind of get by with that. Back then it wasn't necessarily like that. So
yeah, you had two options for tuning it. It was a Market Turbo Tricks or Al from Dyno Flash, right?
Right. Or they had the old school Exceed stuff or whatever it was, like the chips and all that good stuff. And I would, local guys, I would work on their cars on the side, or somebody would hit me up with info. Or at that time, obviously, that Evolution M was a huge community. And back then it was actually very beneficial because, you could get parts cheap, or you could get really good information, or find anybody in your local area that was willing to help you out with something or anything like that. And that's not what got me started, but it definitely helped me progress to where I could financially sustain working on cars. And at that time, when I was about, 20, 21, something like that, I transitioned to a different shop. And that's when I kind of started hitting hardcore, working on stuff on the side, doing all that. And I always had this little saying to where if you were making more money on the side doing your side work than you worked your full-time job, it was, somewhat of a scenario where you need to rethink what you're doing, because if you're making more money on your side job, it may be time to say, hey, maybe I can do this on my own. Let me see what happens. And around that time, which was maybe, 2006, 7, 8-ish or something like that, when the economy really tanked, I was the lead tech, or the only tech, I might say, actually, at a very big body shop towards Raleigh, where I think we had something like 12 or 15 body techs that worked in teams of 3. And every one of those teams fed me work as far as, somebody got in a wreck or anything, or a car got damaged or whatever. They would do all the cosmetic stuff, but I had to basically blueprint the whole car, figure out what was wrong with it, report back to insurance companies. And this is at a young age. I think at the time I was still only like 22, 23-ish. And I was basically responsible for everything mechanical that came in and out of there on a day-to-day basis, but being fed by 15 guys. So you can, somewhat imagine how much of a workload that was for one person, and everybody else that's around you basically is trained and only trained to do, body work, frame work, things like that. So that was by far the most difficult job, labor intensive, that I've ever had.
Mm-hmm. And so how did you go from, you said you were starting to make more money doing the side job as you were your day job. So how did you create ForceFed?
Well, that's interesting. What happened was when I was doing the body shop thing, it was very difficult on me, and I was making very good money. I mean, even at a young age, I was pulling some pretty decent money down. And from starting at a dealership to going to that, I mean, hell, you're working 6 days a week and you never have a Saturday off, while all your friends are working, 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or something Monday through Friday. It wasn't nearly anything like that for me. So I was able to basically sit down and come up with some sort of a plan. And then is when the economy went really bad, and especially down here in the southeast, unemployment was at a ridiculous high rate. And I got to a point where I knew either being laid off or, jobs getting missed or anything like that was coming. And eventually it did, to where it was just, people couldn't afford to spend money, or, people couldn't afford to fix their cars, or financially people just could not spend extra cash on, fixing their car up or fixing something that was damaged, or, anything that was, you could say, a luxury. And that's what happened. And the next thing you know, I'm jobless. I'm sitting on my couch. I'm wondering what the hell I'm going to do, because, unlike my sister, which is basically a chemist that works at a lab in RTP, I have no degree, no schooling as far as, hey, you have some sort of job placement because you have, a bachelor's or a master's or anything like that. All I had to go off of was, ASE certifications or GM certifications or whatever have you. And unless you're going to one of those types of jobs, it doesn't really mean dick anywhere else, So they kind of place you to where it's like, all right, cool, you're going to be ours, you're going to work for us, you can't work for anybody else, that kind of thing. So I was somewhat screwed. So I said, well, hell, I did pretty good with the car stuff on the side. I'm going to start selling parts, which now I know. Nowadays, everybody's doing the MAP policy kind of thing is a big issue nowadays. So basically, that's what I started out doing. I already had connections from doing side work. So I was like, well, I can, sell parts on forums, sell parts on the internet. I can feed work to myself, that kind of thing. And that's what I did. And it came to where even being technically unemployed, I was making as much money on the side doing that without spending gas money or, having to pay insurance from a job or anything like that, or waiting on a paycheck, to where I could just, depending on how long I stayed up or how long I stayed on the internet, I could make as much as I wanted to or get as much work as I wanted, as long as I stuck to it, pushed myself. If I wanted to put in 24 hours straight on a computer or, out at an event somewhere, a car meet or whatever, I could definitely put something together to make sure I was taken care of for the next couple months or whatnot. So that's kind of what led to that. And then I met a couple of guys that owned a shop. So between me selling parts online and building engines or whatever have you, I could feed them work as far as, hey, I've got this guy that might live, wherever around us. I can get the work, and you guys can pull the motor. I can build it. I can order the parts, so it was a win-win for them, basically.
Okay, so you were building engines or whatever you could out of your garage or apartment or something?
Not necessarily. It was friends' houses or the whatever shop was doing the work or anything like that. It was basically, I was trying to set myself up for something in the future, but at the same time helping someone else get sustained as far as feeding someone work.
So kind of freelance with some part sales on the side, huh?
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. And thank God for the economy kind of tanking, because when I had all that spare time is basically when I built all my relationships with, the bigger manufacturing companies like you spoke to a lot of.
I mean, you were really kind of forced into creating ForceFed. It kind of sounds like where your body shop job kind of downsized and you had to leave that, and then you were making more money on the side anyway, so it kind of was a natural transition for you. So do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur, or was the whole business thing kind of like out of necessity?
I guess you could say a bit of both. It was out of necessity, certainly, because you know how it goes. If you're out of a job already, you have to get up, you got to do something because you got to eat, you got to pay bills, you got to take care of your family, all that good stuff. And it did somewhat motivate me to just go ahead and do it, because like I said, if I didn't, there's no telling where I would be at. I mean, I could be, sitting in a jail somewhere, or just still out of work, or, just be another statistic. I guess you could say I was kind of forced into starting ForceFed, but I had at least somewhat made some of a presence online as far as, being, hey, a go-to guy in this area for, any work that might be needed or parts, or, just a good advisor as far as what you should do, what you shouldn't do, who should you buy from, who you shouldn't buy from, all that good stuff. And I guess you could say I did fall into it slightly, but it was kind of one of those times to where, even being forced into it, it was a good chance for me to just say, well, I don't have anything else going on. I might as well just try it and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, hey, there's always, I could go back to school and have another huge, financial aid bill, or, whatever have you.
So taking the risk of starting your own business was really, it was interesting to you. You liked doing it. It wasn't that you just needed to find a job somewhere else. It was like, I like working on cars. I got something going. Let's do it, sort of.
Yes. Yeah, you could definitely say that. The part that being that young and starting it, I was kind of naive into the fact that I had no idea, book-wise or paper-wise or tax-wise, how a shop actually operated as far as the office kind of thing went. I knew extensively how the shop ran, how you dealt with customers, how you wrote up, repair orders or anything like that. But as far as the paperwork and the really hard stuff that nobody ever speaks on or, really sees unless they already own a business or have done that kind of job at a business, how it works. So that was the hardest transition period for me, is figuring out, all right, cool, I can work on whatever, I can build whatever, I can deal with people, but how am I going to actually do this office thing when everybody leaves? And it took me a long time to figure that out. However, I'm thankful now for how hard I worked, just because it was, hey, you're going to have to get off your ass and do this, or, you have nothing. So it worked out pretty well, I think.
Have you ever doubted yourself, or, wondered if this isn't going to work sort of attitude? And if so, how did you overcome that feeling?
Yes, I certainly have. I still do that to this day, to be honest with you. Shops have bad weeks, bad months. You might have a period in a season where there's just not that much work coming in. And, regardless of how the advertising thing goes, or how much money you put into advertising, or, promoting yourself or going to events, you physically can't just magically make the work just appear out of nowhere. I mean, there's some times where I'm sure anybody listening to any of these podcasts can understand, there'll be times where you're sitting around thinking like, man, I sure hope we get some work this week or next week or whatever. And then all it takes is, one guy drives up, you do a good job for him. The next thing you know, 5 other friends are coming behind him. So I certainly have had periods where I doubted myself, and I've never doubted my crew. It's very difficult to where being a small business owner, like you said, only 3 people working here, that I know everything basically filters through me. And if I'm not doing my job, I can't make sure that my techs are cool, or my receptionist can get paid, or, if I have a tuner can get paid, or anything like that. So I know I have to be on my game no matter what, all the time. And I think that that is a very important aspect of owning a business, to where you shouldn't run a business and expect to, okay, I'm just going to pay my employees, they're going to do a job, they're going to make me money. I believe you should, lead and be an example to everyone else, because if, your leader, so to speak, say like myself, is having a bad week, or can't work, or is not doing their job, everybody else is going to suffer, and I'm just not okay with accepting that.
What's the worst experience you've had in business?
Honestly, probably when I first started out, understanding how the books worked and how the IRS can find you anywhere they want to, or anything like that, because when it comes down to it, they're going to get their money no matter what. So it doesn't matter how much work you do, or how much money you bring in from doing, X amount of jobs in a month. They want to know where that money is at, and where it's coming from, and how you're spending it. So that probably was the biggest eye opener to me, was getting on top of the business side of it as far as books go and everything.
Have you been audited?
No, have not been audited, but they certainly will stop by and ask, hey, where's $10,000 at, or anything like that. Okay. Luckily, a good accountant can take care of that for
right,
you.
Exactly, yeah. My CPA promised me that if I ever get audited, that they will cover it. So.
Yeah, you pay them enough, so they should definitely look out for you.
So tell us something you're doing right now that has you fired up.
Right now, it's kind of funny to where, I guess, you mean as far as project-wise?
Yeah, projects, or the direction of the business, anything.
Well, I think the direction of the business, and that's a couple different questions, honestly. The direction of the business is kind of based on, I guess you could say, what would you call it, fads or whatever in the industry, or, what's hot right now kind of thing. And obviously, that things change every couple of years. Guys are getting younger now. I get the jokes now where I'm the old guy with the gray beard and everything when they come in, and I'm not even that old. It's just that I've been doing this so long now and working so hard that it's taken a toll on me. So I had some guy in here the other day that was from the tri-state area, actually, that just moved down, that was getting tuned by somebody. And I asked him how old he was, where he moved, just chit-chatting with customers. And he was like, what are you, about my age? And I said, well, what are you? He said, 46. And I was like, nah, man, I'm 29. So right now, project-wise, what gets me fired up is I actually enjoy moving on to other projects, or doing something, we're not accustomed to, or doing different things that maybe nobody else has done or thought of, or something somebody else wouldn't be willing to touch. You've got a ton of guys in this industry that may focus on one kind of platform or one kind of car, and that is actually really good. I mean, obviously, from knowing me, that's what we started on, was Evo stuff. But even before that, I was a huge Nissan guy. I mean, I've had probably 7 240s, and I grew up on GM. So in general, Evos were just Evos. I never really had a big interest in Mitsubishis as a manufacturer or a platform, but just the Evo alone, especially coming out 03, that was like the hot thing. And now it seems you have to almost adapt to stay alive, especially being a small business like this, where you don't have a company backing you from selling parts or anything like that, or you don't own a product line of whatever, turbos or kits, or do any kind of manufacturing. So if, like, right now, Evos are, I'm not going to say fizzling out, but it's not the same market it was 10 years ago, which I'm sure you could attest to, where you have to kind of adapt and learn other things. And I really enjoy doing that. We got we've gotten pretty heavily into the LS game here lately, which, it seems like the whole market is. I mean, I think I had someone the other day tell me, I cannot remember who it was. I think it was actually Chris Wright. He's an instructor with EFI, if you've done any EFI stuff. And he made a comment that was like 76% of the camshaft aftermarket was LS based. I mean, that's, if you look at numbers, that's freaking incredible, man.
I believe it.
And obviously, again, being in the South, there is a ton of domestic shops around here. And it seems like just because of the sheer number of cars that are LS based, I mean, they can just take a city or a zip code for that matter and just basically sustain themselves for years and years and years just because of the sheer number of cars that are out there that are set up for them. And that's kind of what got us going. No, I'm not going to say in a different direction, but broadening us out as a business to where, like, we were just recently at the Hot Springs VA half-mile event with a Silverado, and it was funny where all the people that have personally known me were like, what are you guys, are you guys going to the Virginia thing? And I would say, well, yeah, what are you taking, an Evo or, a 240 or Super or whatever? And no, we're going out there with a, a turbo Silverado. And what the hell are you going out there with a Silverado? I think you did the same thing.
Yeah,
what are you
I
doing
was like, what? Didn't make sense to me, but it was pretty cool, the video you sent. So
Yeah. It's just something different. And that was really cool. And it was one of those things to where I had to tell the guy that owned it. I was like, look, man, you're driving a truck. These events are basically ran by, GTRs or LS-based cars or Lambos, especially with us being a couple hours from underground racing. That's basically what you're seeing out there. And it's like, look, you're not going to go out there and win. We were just hoping to place or the thing stay together for that matter. And it actually did pretty well. And, regardless of what guys were driving out there, he was certainly the only turbo truck that was there. And it was, a sort of a shocker to everybody that was doing that well. It was a truck. It didn't cost a whole lot of money. And, that's probably, I'm not going to say about the time, but when we started the project, one of those things that was like, we need to broaden out, do some different stuff just to stay alive. Because, obviously they're not making Evos anymore. There's no more Supras. There's, GTRs are changing, obviously. And then you've got these little, I guess you could say, little spits of cars coming out. Genesis stuff didn't seem to work out too well. Then you had the ST stuff. And, so it's very difficult where we are location, going back to what you said about location, as far as focusing on one type of platform, being really good at it and being able to sustain a business for many years. It seems like guys can, or myself even too, can start a business, think, hey, I'm going to work on these kind of cars. We're going to do really good at it. But they don't look, 10, 15 years down the road when parts aren't available anymore, or when that car doesn't exist anymore, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's one of the things people need to think about when they're trying to get into something, especially like this industry.
Okay. So before we continue on to talk more about ForceFed, I wanted to take a second to thank our sponsors. Before we continue on, I wanted to take a second and tell everyone about My Shop Assist. If you own or work for a performance shop of any type, take some time to think about how organized and efficient your operation is. Our goal at Do It For a Living is to tell success stories in the industry and to educate you, the listener, on how to be successful in your business. My Shop Assist is a cloud-based shop management system developed to address the common shortcomings shops have. It enables you to track hours, pictures, notes, and even parts on every job at your shop. Manage your techs with the built-in calendar and assign tasks to them. The jobs can be exported to Quickbooks for accounting and billing. Customers can log in online and follow your progress on their car and digitally sign your work orders. MSA was designed to be simple to use and will help anyone from a one-man shop to the top-performing shops in our industry. Check out the system for free at myshopassist.com. Okay, so Justin, tell us about ForceFed. How big is the shop you're in, and do you rent it or do you own the building?
I do rent the building. I think I'm in about 4,200 square foot. I've got in-ground all-wheel drive 1100 and 3 lifts. So I can fit, maybe doing some very fun Tetris moves, about 22 cars, I believe it is, in here or something like that. So we go from being very, very packed with, you have to push everything around or put it on rollers and kind of push the back of the car around. But we're lucky enough to be in a large enough facility where we can work on whatever we need. I just sure as hell wish I had enough shop space to have a lot more product up.
Are you pushing cars in and out every day?
Oh, yeah.
So you fill the shop every day and then empty it every day?
For the most part, we do. If you get one of those months where, everybody might have their shop might be full of just straight projects or actual physical work where they're installing parts, then you get the months where, like I'm sitting in right now, where it seems like everything here is broke. And I have this funny analogy where it's like guys don't realize when they come to a shop, they expect to see, wherever they go in the country, they expect to see really cool cars. They expect to see, 1,000 horsepower stuff here, 500 horsepower stuff here, all that good stuff. you got to look at it like a doctor's office. You know, the stuff's there for a reason, and if it's not there getting upgrades, it's there because it's getting fixed. So a lot of times guys will come in, like I had a guy, I think I had to hold you off for like an hour today to pick up a car from like Florida or something. And really cool guy, and he knew some guys from down around a couple shops in South Florida, and was like, "Man, you guys got a wide array of cars in here right now." And I said, "Well, yeah, most of them are broke though. What in the world? What kind of projects you got?" And I said, "Well, the ones that are running that are really good, you know, they're not here because there's nothing wrong with them. But the ones that are here, they either got something wrong with them or they're getting parts installed. So I'm either waiting on parts or I'm waiting on guys to tell me what they'd like to do, because that's the other side of it. Guys don't realize is it is like a doctor's office. You're there because either something's wrong with you or you need something done. So that's something people don't think about. So a lot of times we don't have the glamorous stuff in here like some of the other guys do, but nevertheless, you know, you got to work on stuff to make money. And unfortunately, with our region and our area, you know, you have to do a lot of the stuff that a lot of other guys that are blessed with really good locations don't have to do.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever written a formal business plan?
No, actually, I have never written on paper a business plan, just because the experiences that I have with a shop, just hands-on, and I'm big on hands-on experience. The tuning aspect of it, the mechanical aspect of it, I firmly believe that, you know, you can get all the knowledge you can to set yourself up to dive into something, but if you're not touching it hands-on or learning from mistakes, I really don't believe you're going to understand how something's supposed to be done right unless you do it the wrong way a million times. And it might sound bad to a lot of people, but I couldn't tell you how many guys that I've been friends with over the years that ran businesses, and I would tell them things like, you know, you're going to learn how to do stuff the wrong way before you learn how to do the right way.
Right.
And that might not necessarily be true to everyone, but it's certainly worked well for me, or, you know, just giving advice to other guys that want to get into stuff. I mean, you're not just going to jump into anything. I mean, if I opened a hair salon right now, or, you know, you opened a hair salon right now, you're going to mess a whole lot of people up before you figure out how to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think I'd ever fix anybody's hair. But, okay, so you already said it's yourself. You have a full-time tech and you have a receptionist. How do you manage them, and do you find it difficult to do that?
Yes, I do. And it's not the difficulty of managing them as far as them doing their jobs. My problem is I always did everything on my own. I never had anybody help me with anything. I never had a handout. I never had any motivation outside myself, for the most part. There's people along the way that said, "Hey, you know, you talked about this when you were younger." Or I'll see friends that I grew up with that said, "Man, you finally did what you said you were going to do." Well, that doesn't necessarily make you successful, but it is good to hear that from people. The biggest difficulty I have is, say, as far as managing employees, for that fact, is I'm very hard on myself. So if we have a week where my receptionist is answering the phone nonstop, or I'm not able to get on the phone, or my tech's busy and he's got, you know, I don't know, 3 cars to work on, and I'm doing something as far as repair to the shop or on the dyno or whatever, I'm making phone calls to manufacturers, I cannot sit still. I can't keep my hands, you know, idle. I have to be doing something. I have to be active. I have to constantly be asking my tech, "Hey, do I need to do this for you? Or do I need to give you a hand doing this? Or would you like me to pull this in? Or would you like me to, you know, go ahead and check this out?" Or my receptionist, "Hey, do you want me to answer the phone? Do you need me to do any tickets? Do you need any help as far as calling for parts?" And I know I drive them freaking batshit crazy just because they want to say, "Hey, get the hell out of here. Leave me alone." And I guess that's a good thing, because a lot of guys that do have businesses just think, well, hell, I can start a business, pay some people to do some work, and I don't have to do anything. And I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse on my end yet, but it's something I certainly need to work on, because I just can't let go sometimes. And I don't know if that's a bad thing, but I think at the end of the day, they are very happy that they do have somebody they work for that is, you know, motivated to help them if they need help, or they can come to if they have an issue with something, or if they need assistance doing something. I might jump into somebody's ass every now and again, but for the most part, it's just working on me, because at the end of the day, if you work for a business or own a business, if you're not doing your job or you're not pulling your weight, you know, nobody else is going to take it serious.
So the way you're handling them, I mean, are you helping them because you want to make sure they have the tools, or are you always concerned that they're not doing it your way? Like, give me an idea of like your thought process between, you know, how you're handling these situations.
Well, that's a good question, because if you would actually interview anybody that worked for me, I would almost guarantee you they would say, "Well, Justin wants it his way. You know, we're going to do it this way, or it's not going to be done at all." And I did learn personally from working for other people that were like that, to where my tech, for instance, is a very, very good tech, but the way he works, if I tell him I want him to do something, or my receptionist, it might not have the best outcome if I tell them to do their job my way because I'm not doing it. So I have learned that a lot of times I might give them some guidance or some sort of structure as far as what they're doing, but when it comes down to it, they can probably do better doing it their way if they're doing it than me telling them to do it my way. Okay. So that's one thing I'm having a kind of a difficult time letting go doing, just because, like you said, as far as having a bad experience with business, I'm very skeptical that, or not skeptical, but worried that if something goes wrong, I mean, it's got to be fixed. I'm the one that's got to call the shots on it. Exactly. So I have to give a little bit of faith in my employees, or a lot of trust. I mean, anytime with you owning a business, you have to trust somebody you're paying to get something done right, even if you don't see it. So if I have a tech work on a car and they're doing whatever job and I don't even see the car or see what's done with it or anything, I have to basically assume that it's being done the right way. And then if it's not, as soon as someone's upset about it, where's it going to come back to? It's going to come back to me, and then I have to explain it. Well, if I don't know what was going on with it when it was getting done, that's kind of a difficult thing to explain, and then you look like an idiot because you're talking to somebody that's very upset and you had nothing to do with it or even know what caused the issue. Right. So I think it's a very good thing for a business owner to be involved in almost every aspect of their operation. Otherwise, when it comes down to brass tacks and explaining stuff, you don't know how to handle the situation.
Yeah. What is your primary sources of revenue? Is it part sales, service, manufacturing? Can you break it down for us?
The majority of our income right now is labor, and that's kind of the way it always has been. And that's probably, I'm not going to say a good or bad thing, but it's probably my fault, just because coming up in the industry, that's what I was. I was a tech, I was a builder, that sort of thing. So that's what I know. Part sales is a whole different thing. You spent God knows what, an hour waiting on me to set up the computer. I am not a computer guy by any means. So just me setting up a Skype is like over here with a caveman with a hammer and a stone made on the end of it, trying to figure out how to get a thing to work. And I think I talked to myself on the headset like 15 times before it actually worked, and then I felt like I had done something amazingly great. But nowadays kids doing this stuff, I would look like an idiot. Like, wow, this guy just figured out how to use Skype. What an idiot,
So, do you do any advertising or marketing for the business?
We have. When we first started, especially when you're on a startup, your name can only go so far if you're a startup. So we did a ton of, I guess you could call the car meets, the industry meets, things like that. And we did get out there. We would pay for vendor spots. You know how that kind of stuff goes. If you get a 10 by 10, you can bring a car or two cars, and it might cost you X amount of dollars, and just be seen. So for the longest time, even when we first started, our cars would be seen. We would be seen at events. We would, conversate with people, talk to people about stuff, things like that. And it did work out very well, especially when the forum thing was really big. And now more so, I'm not going to say we outgrew it, but a lot of times, just being such a small operation, I don't have just the time to sit in front of a computer and do the forum stuff or whatever. Like some of the bigger companies will have employees that, are just totally salary based on, social media or part sales or online support or anything like that. I just physically can't do it. And that's a lot going back to the managing my employees as far as a problem of mine, to where if I sit on the computer through the day and talk to guys on, 5 different kind of forums or blogs or whatever for 3 hours, that's 3 hours I could have had, getting done on the dyno or getting done with a car in the shop or anything. So it's somewhat difficult, and it turns into some really, really crazy hours.
Okay. And then the next question is, how many hours do you work a week?
That varies a lot. I would like to say, on an average normal week where nothing goes wrong, everything's smooth, cars are in and out getting serviced, like right now all the service cars we have, I might work 60 hours a week. When an event might be coming up, or we're waiting on parts or whatever, one of those things where as an owner you're like, hey, I don't care, we're staying until it's done, I don't care what you got to do, or I'll stay and do it and you won't get paid for it kind of thing. I might work I don't know, 100, 105 hours, something like that. There's been days in some of the people that will hear this or listen to this after we're done, we had an event with D-Sport a long time ago where we put on a race at our local track, and I believe it was the first time D-Sport had ever been on the East Coast. And I had some help from some supporters, but basically set up the whole event by myself for the most part. Got in contact with them, the track, setting all the rules up, setting all the EMT stuff up, all the racers, all that, and it turned out to be a pretty good event. But I don't think, no joke, I slept for 3 days, and then and when I say don't slept, I mean like I did not go home for 3 days. I was literally in the shop, straight in the shop area for 3 days, and it was interesting because we had a car that was getting shot by D-Sport, and it had an issue like the weekend or week before or something when we were at Import Alliance in Atlanta, and something was wrong with the rings on the motor or something like that. And I think when they shot the car had physically ran with a new motor for about an hour. So the guy showed up at their hotel to get the car shot at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and they had no idea that it was a brand new motor, and we had spent, I think, something like 48 straight hours rebuilding the entire car.
And so you're doing 100 hours a week. Is that 7 days a week?
No, it's not 7 days a week. To start out with, we were doing Monday through Saturday,
okay.
And I don't want to overwork everybody that works for me just because I've been the employee that had to work 6 days a week or 7 days a week and work 70 hours, and that was mandatory. It was kind of like this is what you were expected to do, and you were going to do it. And even at a younger age, you're say 18 to 25 years old, everybody wants a Saturday, Sunday off to recover or whatever have you from what you were doing through the weekend. And I never really had that. So I always said, even when I was doing it, like, man, if I ever get another job or anybody ever works for me, I don't want them to have to work like this. This is just ridiculous. You shouldn't have to, basically kill yourself for someone just to make a living. And when we first started, we were Monday through Saturday, and I think on Saturday we might have closed at 3 or 5 o'clock, but that always turns into 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever. It's kind of one of those things where if the money's still coming in, you might as well just stay and get it. Otherwise you might miss it. And now we're Monday through Friday with appointments only on Saturday, but even right now it's a Saturday, and I'm still here. I had a car get picked up earlier, and a lot of times we get a lot of work from out of state, so I might have to meet the guys down here on a Sunday or drop off really late on a weeknight or something like that, and that's just kind of the thing you have to do if you're a really small business.
Yep. And so your tech, is he at 40 hours, or you said you have people working 70 hours? Is your tech work 70 hours too?
Well, one of those things where everybody looks at like, if I'm going to be here, they need to be here. And there'll be times where I'll say, look, you need to go home. You need a weekend, enjoy yourself. You don't have to stay here. Okay. And, thankfully, a lot of them are kind of like, hey, you're the boss. You're going to do your thing. We're going to stick with you. And I greatly appreciate that. But I don't want somebody to have to physically kill themselves, if they don't have to. But there are times when I say, look, man, it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night. Go home. You need some rest. I'll take care of what we got left. Have a weekend.
Okay, so I mean, I've never had a tech work that many hours for me. But have you gone through a lot of guys?
No. I mean, surprisingly enough, nobody would ever believe it. And I see turnover in a lot of different places. Uh-huh. This is still the exact same core people that started this with me years and years and years ago. But that does come down to a lot of loyalty with me is a big, big thing, okay. A huge thing. And I'm not exactly the most trusting person on the planet, and anybody that personally knows me, you either love me or hate me. And most of the people that hate me, when they're around me for a long time, they end up loving me. So I guess you could say I'm very, very black and white. There's not a whole lot of gray area with me, but it pays off in the end just because if you're down for me or you're down for the business or anything like that, you've got everything taken care of. I won't let anything go wrong for you, your family, anything. Okay. So I am thankful that I do have those employees that'll stick out with me, but I never require anybody to work, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night or anything like that. I'm not a slave driver.
I would assume he's probably not salary pay then, huh?
No, the way I do it is kind of based off of what I'm used to in the past. So if anybody's ever been a line tech or anything, you might work, straight flat rate. Yeah. Well, I've been there before where you might make $20 an hour, but if you don't flag, but 5 hours worth of work a week and you make $100, but you were there for 40 hours, I'm not going to say that's necessarily wrong because, the other side of that is summertime comes around and you've got, 40 hours of work a week, but you flag 100, 150 hours, it kind of pays off. Mm-hmm. But for anybody that's got a family or anything like that, or anybody that's ever worked at a dealership or done flat rate, it can be very difficult if you're the sole, breadwinner in your family or anything, to where if you have a bad week or a bad month or something, I mean, it can decimate, any plans you had for vacations or, holidays or anything like that. And I have had a couple jobs to where you would get somewhat of, a base salary plus commission off of whatever kind of labor you did. So I think that's very fair to where, okay, if we don't do crap this week or you don't get, stuff done, especially with aftermarket where, I've got a couple cars here right now that might be completely done, but we're waiting on a manufacturer to make like one part. And it's not our fault. It's not the customer's fault. And sometimes manufacturers get backed up. So that's kind of a difficult situation to be in where you're waiting on a $30 part for a $5,000 job to be done. And you can't pay your tech yet because, the customer hasn't paid full up. And it becomes kind of difficult. So I'll give a base salary, say, and then plus, whatever percentage off a commission.
Okay,
so if
so
they
you're doing
don't
a
make
hybrid
commission,
then.
Right, exactly. And there's good and bad to both, but I believe no matter what, I don't think anybody should work 30, 40, 50 hours a week and, not make anything just because they didn't get any work done or they were waiting on parts, which is not their fault whatsoever.
Yeah, I think the hybrid thing is I've actually seen several shops doing something similar to that, so it seems to be pretty common because the aftermarket's very hard to do book rated stuff as well. So like, you put a turbo kit, like a forward-facing turbo kit on an Evo, like there's no like set hours for that. You got to take the AC off and there's some other stuff associated with it that just a regular book turbo job may not, have it in the time for that. So, yeah, it's the hybrid pay scale, I think, is definitely a good way to do it. So,
yeah, and it's very hard to price labor for that when you've got somebody that's making, their salary on, commission or anything.
Right. And so, do you think the pay justifies the time spent?
Yes and no. But that also comes down to your tech and how hard they're willing to work. Obviously, if you go home, you're not making any money when you're not in the shop, correct? Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things, again, time management. If you've got, 3 different sets of work you got to do and you've got to do them by the end of the week or some sort of a timeline or a time frame you have to get it done by as far as a deadline, as far as I'm concerned, don't go home, get it done so you're going to get paid for it, it's going to be clear. And then, hey, if you're done and it's Friday afternoon and everything we have is getting picked up and you're waiting around, clean the shop up, go home,
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what are the primary tools you use for managing the business? Some examples would be like QuickBooks. Are you using clipboards? I mean, you obviously are the shop manager, MSA, anything like that?
We're straight up QuickBooks.
Okay.
It seems to work out pretty well. The one thing I probably will revisit is the way we're doing our merchant service as far as charging cards, everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
For the longest time, it was about keeping costs down just because, we were concerned a lot with overhead and how much we had to spend. Obviously, like I said, I didn't start with a whole lot of money or take out a business loan, so it was kind of a day-by-day basis. And for the longest time, we've used Square, the mobile app or whatnot, and it's worked out pretty well. But a lot of companies like that, they don't protect you as far as fraudulent charges or anything. And we've been hit a couple times with that. But it's one of those things, like I said again, a learning curve. Till you're experiencing it or hit with something like that, so you can adapt to how that kind of thing works, you don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know if you listened to one of the podcasts we did was with Steve Ciabattoni. He's 360 Payments. He talked a lot about the credit card stuff, and it's definitely a very misunderstood topic. And like for most of us, we don't understand it.
Oh yeah, certainly. You're talking to a bunch of gearheads that are supposed to know how like credit card transactions work and fees and that good stuff. Yeah.
So I wanted to take a second to pause and tell our listeners about the class that Efi University is offering now. Efi University is hosting a new class called Essentials of Operating a Shop. If you're interested in learning how to run your shop more efficiently, this class is for you. For details and to find a class near you, go to EFI101.com and look for the Essentials of Operating a Shop class. Our next class is being held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on June 4th, followed by Denver, Colorado on July 16th. Be sure to use the coupon code DIFAL for $50 off when you sign up. Okay, so tell us about yourself some more. What are some things that you struggle with in business and how do you deal with it?
What I struggle with business most is, and a lot of other shop guys can attest to it, is if you have a customer basis that you constantly see. Say if you have a couple guys that have a couple kind of cars you work on, and you not constantly, but you periodically see them through different services, and they're geared towards just going to you for a service or whatever they need to do on their car. They just don't trust anybody else doing it. What's very difficult about that situation is they may become, in their eyes, very close to you or friends or entitled, and that becomes very difficult because at that point people expect certain things. They expect to get the discounts or the free services, or you're almost on call for them 24/7, and that does get to be pretty difficult. So you do, especially as the owner, have to be somewhat of a hard ass, especially say with me, for instance, I really don't give out my personal information to people, but you know how Facebook goes and stuff. If you're not advertising to people that know who you are, you know, it's very difficult to get business. So obviously every one of our customers can get on my Facebook or get on our Facebook page or know how to email me or something. And there's been times where I'll get phone calls at 7 o'clock in the morning or messages at 12 o'clock at night where somebody was out racing and hurt something or anything. And I don't have a problem with that, but at some point it gets to be expected, and you have to draw a very fine line to where it's like, look, you know, we'll take care of this, but you know, when you leave, it's not like, you know, we're some kind of emergency service where we're on call 24/7, which I have no problem with, because a lot of times that type of service becomes beneficial because it does help, and that word does get spread around that you actually care about your customer. And one of the main things that's made us successful is we've never been one to be the rich company, or you know, we don't have somebody driving around a $200,000 build or something. However, we've always been known as we don't really have any comebacks, which everybody has some here and there for little small things, but we don't really have any comebacks from total mess ups, or I don't want anybody to ever leave my shop with a bad experience or have a bad taste in their mouth for us or anything. Me is one thing. I'll be the bad guy 10 times out of 10 just because that's the way it should be. But I don't want anybody to ever be upset with our receptionist because they don't like the way they handled their bill, or they don't want to be. I don't want to be upset with our technician because they don't like the way they worked on their car or what they did with it or anything. So that's probably the most difficult aspect of it, is learning how to deal with relationships as far as business is concerned, keeping it business and friends at the same time.
Right. And so you kind of touched on a little bit of this stuff already, and I already asked part of this question, but so marketing and advertising your business, you said you used to do forums, and obviously building cars, and you just touched on the word of mouth, but do you use Facebook ads at all, or?
Yeah, actually, and you can correct me. I've never hired anybody to do any social media stuff. Twitter is ridiculous. If you're a celebrity or a model or something, I think it works. But for whatever reason, I don't know why we can't get Twitter to work the way we want it to. Probably because I don't know how to use it at all, and I'm not big on tweeting or anything.
I don't think any car people do Twitter that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Even when I try to tag some big manufacturer, like if I tag, I don't know, just a fuel injector company or something like that, they don't even have 100 followers or something, and they don't even look at it. But Instagram's pretty cool just because you can basically get a wide array of people just see your stuff, and that has worked really well. And Facebook also, I've done one paid ad, but what's funny about Facebook is the biggest thing to anybody owning a business is basically free advertising,
right.
Which is really good. So it doesn't cost you anything to get your name out there or advertise, but now it seems like they're lowering the search content so much to where a year ago or 2 years ago, if I posted a video of a car on the dyno or one at the track, or pictures of parts coming in or whatever, it might say 5,000 people reached or 2,500 people active on the thread or something like that. Now it seems like it's diminished that by at least 60, 70, 80%. So it's almost like they're gearing it towards you have to pay them to actually promote it somewhere. So I did one just as a trial run from a manufacturing company that's around us that does chassis work, and they said, just throw $30, $40, $50 at it and look at how much response time you get and the demographic you get as far as people being able to see your stuff elsewhere. And lo and behold, I paid for one ad, and I honestly cannot remember what it was. I think it was just a sales ad for Magnuson Superchargers or something like that, just where you put one of those package deal things together, and all of a sudden we gained I think 500 likes or something in a week, and it was a 30,000 viewed thing or whatever. Which that's not my really good side, is doing social media stuff, but unfortunately you almost can't survive without it nowadays.
You have to have a little bit of knowledge of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can post a picture and say something. That's about it.
Do you have a 1-year plan for First Fed?
Not necessarily a 1 year. I would say I'm always looking farther down the line, say 5 to 10 years. And a lot of that is based on, what the market and the industry is going. 1 year plan being, I would like to do more as far as manufacturing of our own product. I mean, we came out with a CNC head for Evos years and years and years ago, and there was not a whole lot of advertising behind it because back then I wasn't paying for ads. It was just forum stuff, and they did really well. They were on some of the highest powered cars. At one time, I believe our head was on the fastest car in Puerto Rico. I had some people from Greece, I think there was, and some other places that were wanting the program for it. And I worked with a couple different companies, and like Kigley Racing was really helpful in that, because obviously Kevin's like some sort of genius or something like that in Kigley. I'm sure you know him.
Yep.
And he worked with us pretty extensively on. We only use their springs, their lash adjuster on it, all that. So that's the only will come on. I won't sell it without it. And for him to sign off on it without barely knowing us whatsoever was a really grateful thing, and it really surprised me. And they did very well. And I would like to get in that side of the industry a lot more as far as manufacturing goes, and actually having a product.
Okay, and does that correspond with your 5-year plan too?
Yes, completely. So
moving on, we move into the quick answer questions. Tell us something that's a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
That what is it? Who makes the HydraMat?
Holley HydraMat, I think is what it is.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right. What software programs do you use daily?
We use QuickBooks for all of our booking and everything. And then tuning-wise, we do everything from obviously OpenECU on Evos to Cobb Access Port for GTR, Subarus, burger tuning stuff for BMWs, HP tuners for GM. We've dabbled some Mega Squirt, a lot of Haltech. I've known Adam at Haltech for a very long time now. And that's probably the core stuff we do.
Okay. And do you have a favorite app that you use daily?
I probably post more on Facebook than my girlfriend does.
All right. What's your favorite shop tool?
Probably anybody that has a dyno will say a dyno.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
If you're building these kind of cars, it's kind of one of those things where a tech can take you so far, a receptionist can take you so far, I can take you so far as for building a motor. But if you don't have a dyno, when it's all said and done, you can't get it done. So you almost need a dyno, or in our industry that is. So definitely the dyno.
And what are you driving right now?
Right now, I am driving a 7.3 Power Stroke Excursion.
Okay, big SUV, huh?
Yeah. And I don't even have any kids. It's kind of funny.
Okay, so let's close this thing out. What do you think the future of automotive performance is going to be?
I'm not sure yet, and that's what's fun about it. You don't really know what's going to come. And it's funny to when a new platform comes out and everybody's all hyped on it. Like right now, I think the biggest hype is the Focus RS thing. But, in 5 years, that could turn into, say, a Hyundai Genesis or a BRZ
Hopefully
or FRS,
not, right?
where there's not a ton of support, and they're really hot for a little while just to get car sales. And then the next thing you know, there's not a whole lot of aftermarket support for it, which is not good for, me, you, whoever that does the aftermarket thing.
Okay, and how do we connect with you and your company?
You can find us on Facebook at Force-Fed Performance, and on Instagram at Force-Fed Tuned in one word. And we're in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and our phone number is 910-354-2871.
Awesome. Justin, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell your story.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone.